Okay, sitting on the apron we have de Havilland DHC-6 Twin Otter turbine engines. Like the aircraft, the engines are made in Canada by Pratt & Whitney PT6s, developing about 680 horsepower each. So we'll take the control locks off and check the control movement. So left and right aileron, elevator back, forward, and rudders left and right. And on the tip of the rudder pedals, on the very top with your toes, you can press them for left and right brakes. And like any aircraft, it helps in steering on the ground. So left and right aileron, up and down elevator, and left and right rudder. If you notice on the floats, there's no rudder pedals. We use differential throttles for steering on the water. There's the two throttles. Beside them to the right are the propeller levers in full feathered mode, and the red levers hiding behind them are the fuel condition levers. We'll get a better look at them later. The throttles, the big levers, when you pull back, those levers, when you pull back on landing, puts the propellers in reverse pitch or beta pitch for braking. Now this lever, you can choose external power source for starting the aircraft or the internal batteries. It's recommended to use external power whenever possible. If your internal batteries are good and you're on a lake somewhere or at a small airport like this where there is no external power, then that's how we'll start it, and that's how we'll start it today. Now if the batteries are questionable, you can start it with the propellers in the full fine position, which is full forward, full increase, to minimize air friction, and it's a little easier on the batteries. Now we have many tests and checks on our checklist that I'm not covering in order for us to concentrate on just starting. There's the master switch, and there's the auto engine igniter for left and right engine. If you do want to ignite the engines manually by holding the switches, you can flip that up, flick it to manual, and start them manually by holding the switches. But we're going to do it automatically. We just have to flick the lever, and that's all we have to do. There's the landing lights we'll use on taxiing and takeoff. So let's position so we can see the gauges a little better. Now there are two sets of gauges arranged vertically, left gauges and the right gauges. The larger ones are the engine RPM and temperature gauges, and the smaller ones are fuel flow, oil temp, and oil pressure gauges. We have to monitor them very closely during startup. Now on the torque pressure in PSI, the Series 300 planes can torque up to 50 for takeoff and cruise at 40. Now if it's a Series 100 or 200 Twin Otter, you can only go as high as 42.5 psi. The engine temperature, turbine temperature, that's the prop RPM in percentage, and the turbine RPM in percentage. For starting, the turbine RPM has to be at 12. About 5 seconds after igniting to about 12. Then you can introduce the fuel using the red fuel condition levers. So let's pull back so we can get a better view of the levers, the starting panel, and the gauges for the process of starting. So once we ignite, we hit 12% on the NG gauge and introduce the fuel. We'll take a look at the oil pressure and see that all the other needles are rising to their proper position. Once things are stable, we can introduce the correct prop position, which would be full fine, which is full forward. So we're on battery, master on, switch to the right engine first. You can hear it spooling up, and watch the right gauge, NG gauge. At 12%, we can introduce the fuel. So I'll reach up, grab the right lever, and turbine RPM's coming up. Oil pressure is good. Oil temperature will take a while to come up. There's the propeller RPM is low because we're pushing paddles that are in full feathered. The temperature is coming up and the torque is low but normal because we're not going anywhere yet. We're not working the engines. Once things are stable, we can unfeather the right engine and put it to full increase, which is full fine. That'll allow the propeller RPM to spool up higher, which you can see there. So it'll come up to about the 2 o'clock position, which is about normal. Once things are stable, we can start the left engine. Okay, so we flick the igniter, auto igniter to left. You can hear the left engine spooling up. Check the left NG gauge for 12% and introduce the fuel. We go back, check oil pressure, see that the oil temperature is starting to come up, turbine RPM's up, prop speed is low because it's still feathered, the left one's still feathered, and the temperature's up, turbine temperature, and the torque is above 0 but low because we're not working the engines. Once it's stable, we can go back up and take the left engine out of full feather and put it to full increase, which is full fine. Once things stabilize, you can see the left propeller spooling up faster and faster. And once we've got this done, we are pretty much ready for taxi. However, we're forgetting the generators. So once it's stable, let's swing up to the panel above our heads. Now that the NG is past 15%, we can introduce the generators. Flick the right one on and the left one on. And while we're up here, let's turn on some lights for taxiing and takeoff. Anti-collision, position lights, and the taxi lights. And then we'll swing down, find the landing lights, and flick them on. Landing lights for takeoff and landing, along with the taxi lights, just for anti-collision purposes. So we're stable, everything's in the green. Now we have not covered many of the checklist items because we've focused just on starting, but there is far more on the checklist that we should do. Now all we have to do is check our flight plan. We've checked the weather, checked the NOTAMs, checked the traffic. We're ready to taxi.